one.
Troop Smooch and the Dog Show. Another new episode.
What's it doing?
It's coming on tonight.
I believe you.
It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dog Show. Your hosts, Troop Brenson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
Yes. Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dog Show with Troop and Smooch. And another glorious night, episode 95.
95, Troop Brenson. Come on.
That means that 100 is coming up pretty soon.
It does.
And we are putting together just a fantastic couple of shows as we get around that 199 and 100. You guys, if you like what we do, and you know we have a certain niche, and it's different than a lot of folks, we're gonna really bring some of those things all together, have a great time. But that's a ways away. It's a little over a month away, unless we start doubling shows up and hit it really quick. We could do it next week if we wanted to.
Be hard to come up with that material. I think our niche is
so.
our niche is this: smart people, and right after that, attractive people. If you notice, most podcasts don't have either smart people or smartcast. I've already screwed it up. Smart people or attractive people.
What an idiot!
I
just wanted you to feel like you were on social media right now.
I am the worst. Did you see what I did on social media with the San Diego Chargers?
I did. I mean, that's an easy mistake to make when we're talking about McConkey going to the Chargers. Yeah. Is it not San Diego? It's still San Diego to me. It's just like Twitter's still Twitter.
McConkey, he got on his donkey.
It's L.A. and X.
Man, please. And the Raiders are not in L.A. either, are they?
I don't know. I didn't know they still had a team until they drafted Brock Bowers.
Yeah, when you fly into, I know you went to Vegas, was it last year or the year before, I guess, when you went to Bobo's birthday?
I went 2 years in a row. So, yeah, the year before that.
Yeah.
Obviously,
when you fly in and then you get that Uber on heading to the Strip, you see their big, beautiful stadium where the Las Vegas Raiders are playing now. And the one and only Brock Bowers, one of our favorites.
Playing in the Death Star. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like the Death Star. But, yeah, he's the perfect. We said it on the podcast last week. We watched Brock get drafted live right here. So it's been 1 week that he's been a Raider. But he's the perfect guy to be in Sin City because he is not enticed by any of the trappings of the world.
It's not.
Brock just liked to football.
I think McConkey, if Bowers gets decent quarterback play, he's going to make the quarterback better, for one thing.
Yes.
If he can get good quarterback play and they recognize that he is a guy you want to throw to often, then it doesn't always happen. Some of these offensive coordinators, they can't get out of their own way. Mm-hmm. So who knows? I think Lad McConkey landed in a much better spot with the L.A. Chargers. Is that right? I'm saying it right now?
Justin Herbert, buddy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's going to get a lot of playing time. It looks like that depth chart. He looks really good there. And we're going to talk about Smooch. Go ahead.
I was going to tell you this. Did you know this? The Chargers needed tight end as well. They had a chance to get both McConkey and Bowers and took tackle. Remember that was Joe Alt or something. I think they took tackle. But they could have gotten Bowers and McConkey. That would have been so much. I'd have had a jersey if they had Bowers and McConkey. So.
Right. It'd have been like you got the Chargers and you got the Philly Dogs too, who did take another Bulldog as a free agent.
And the Packers are loading up on the Bulldogs too now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And they said that I think it was Philly who took Kendall Milton, right? And he signed one of the biggest deals of anybody not drafted. So as a free agent.
Yeah.
He signed a pretty big deal. It's good that we mentioned that because I got some stuff from Twitter that I pulled up on him. I'm glad we remembered that as we talk about this draft. It just completed this past weekend. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to also compare it to maybe a draft a couple years ago and maybe the draft that Michigan thinks they had right now and how that compares historically as they think they're the best it's funny that they think they are that good historically, and then look at what the Dawgs draft this next coming year, which could actually be historic. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. 15 draft picks is the record. Georgia has that from 2022, and they thought that Michigan may get close to that, but they didn't at all. No, a lot of their draft picks were from later in the rounds. Georgia in 2022 had guys going in his first 3 rounds, and Michigan had guys going majority of those guys going in the last 3 rounds. So you would notice that that's a different in terms of your talent, how it's laid out on your team. If you're being intellectually honest, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the draft. There's also some other stuff that's popped up that kind of lands in our lap as so FSU,
God,
Florida State University. People aren't talking about them. I mean, if a former player who just got drafted, Keon Coleman, makes some ludicrous comments on RG3's podcast or whatever show he's got going on, and RG3 doesn't check him, he just laughs and shakes his head. Because I think RG3 is about in the same mold as intellectually, but we're going to talk about that. And I think that Keon Coleman, as a former wide receiver for FSU, I think we haven't been giving him the credit that he needs in terms of his intellectual ability. We're going to talk about that, but I'm just setting up the show for you folks right now, so we are going to cover that, right?
That's the tease. Yes, the citadel of football knowledge that exists in Keon Coleman's head. We're going to probe into that this evening.
I bet that's not said anywhere else on the Twitter sphere or anywhere else. The citadel of football knowledge. Man, I like it.
You are welcome, planet Earth.
And folks, if listen, we've already put some great stuff out there. I know our dog fans have already seen it, but you need to share some of that, because Smooch did a little video edit of Lad McConkey, and we love Lad McConkey, so we're going to promote him
so hard.
But tell us what happened with that, what that was about.
Yeah, so I was scouring, around, and a couple of people had sent me a piece of footage, and it was Lad, just peewee football. I don't know how old you say he is there, 7 or 8?
He looked like 8 or 9, maybe 8.
8 or maybe 9 at the oldest, and and when I watched, there were actually 2 touchdowns on the film, and but the first touchdown, it struck something in my brain, and I said, "Oh my gosh!" Because he goes one way and cuts back the other, and I said, "I've heard this call before. This was pitch to the right, coming back this way to Lad McConkey," and it just—I don't know why, but it triggered in my brain. Mississippi State first play, second half of the game, the end around to Lad, and I was like, I'm gonna go get the Georgia broadcast of that, and I'm gonna sync it up. And so went and did it, and I maybe made 2 or 3 time edits, where you take out some spots to make it match up, but it almost fit. It was almost like that touchdown Lad scored was a prophecy, because it almost matched up perfectly. So I made a couple of time edits and put it together, but it is fantastic, and it's Lad McConkey out there doing his thing.
Yeah, so good, and I enjoyed it, and I was like, man, where did Smooch find this thing at? And then I found out that he was actually the one that put it together. I was like, wow,
man, find it. I made it, yeah.
Made it. The Dog Show, making their own content.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but there's a few things that's happened this week. It feels like, we don't have – I've had people ask us or sometimes criticize us, and it's not Georgia fans, of course, wanting to know why we talk so much about other teams. We talk about Georgia a good bit, but there's no football games happening right now. Mm-hmm. And so this is talking season. And if it's talking season, your fan base is saying sometimes spot on stuff, a lot of times not spot on. A lot of times of delusional things. And that's where we live. We live in that area. We live in those comments.
Those are our people.
Yeah, so we like doing that. And so we're going to, and Keon Coleman pops up, and I saw that really quick. I was like, look at this. Look at this right here. I don't know if you want to cover that or talk about draft first. I don't know.
Well, let's talk about draft first. We can always get back to Keon, but I will say the Keon thing came as close to ruining my day as it could, because there's a movie called Idiocracy, and it's about kind of as the world disintegrates and falls into moral decay, this absolute type of, I would call it glorious ignorance that sort of takes over. And then this Keon Coleman video pops up of him with RG3, who did nothing to fight the problem. He accepted it and he and he pushed it forward. And but yeah, that was wild. But draft, let's talk draft. What you got?
So draft completed this past weekend. Georgia had 8 members, eight players selected in that draft, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 more signed unrestricted free agent signings or contracts. Brock Bowers went to the Raiders. Amarius Mims went to the Bengals. McConkey to the Chargers. Kamari Lassiter went to the Houston Texans. Good place for him. Javon Bullard went to those Green Bay Packers. Tyke Smith, the third round. Those are all third-round selections. I think 6 in the first 3 rounds. Smooch went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then a little bit later, Cedric Van Pran, Buffalo Bills. Logue, very surprised because based on his combine and what I was surprised. Not surprised that the Falcons picked him, but surprised that he got picked.
If you would have told me, Troop Brinson, that Kendall Milton would go undrafted and Zion Logue would be drafted, I would say there's no way that can happen, but only the Atlanta Falcons could make that a reality. So,
And then Dejon Edwards, he was assigned the deal with Pittsburgh. Kendall Milton, of course, signed the deal with the Eagles. Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint with the Washington Commanders. And then another surprise, Tramel Walthour signed with the Baltimore Ravens.
Interesting.
I'd even forgotten he was, going to play. He didn't play a whole lot for Georgia last year, just spot duty, but a defensive lineman, and he come through the Georgia program.
Right. And you're that's kind of a flyer. You're taking a chance on a guy. I think that of all those that you gave out, the big surprise is to me is Kendall Milton. But I think the fact that Kendall Milton signed, if I'm not mistaken, one of the largest free agent undrafted contracts in history, that tells you that there were people that were hoping he'd go undrafted, but there were numerous teams, because you only have that happen if there's a bidding war. That's the only way that happens. And so there were multiple teams hoping he would slip. This is a guy that we were talking about as a freshman in the same category with Nick Chubb before injuries took a large portion of his career away. And I'm going to tell you this. I thought about this today, Troop Brinson. I think Kendall Milton has helped a lot in terms of the outlook on can he regain his form by Zamir White. Because Zamir White – fell to the 4th round out of Georgia. He had those 2 horrible ACLs, then he had 2 years at Georgia, but his best football was ahead of him if he could stay injury-free. And now he is eaten up with potential and poised for a huge year with Brock Bowers out there in Las Vegas. And I think that seeing that it is possible to leave Georgia and your best football be in your future. That never happened at Alabama. You think about those running backs came out of Bama. Their best football was in college. It didn't happen when they got out. But with Zeus and hopefully with Kendall, teams are seeing, their best football may be down the road for them once they get healthy again and then realize that talent. Both of them only scratched the surface of their talent at Georgia.
And you explained it well, and there's very good potential for Milton to carve out a good NFL career, of course. And but on Twitter, Florida fans on Twitter decided this was the time to poke fun at Georgia and Kendall Milton and his dad, who is a bodybuilder. Father of Ballers is his moniker on Twitter. We follow him, and the Florida fan trusting the process says, wasn't it Kendall Milton's dad that was on here threatening people for saying his son sucked and then he goes undrafted, and they just laugh. I I thought those, he thought he would be able to say that and just everybody kind of chime in back and forth a little bit. He didn't know that Kendall Milton's dad was going to be responding. and his dad says,
that's not the dad you want responding.
No.
I'll put a picture up of his dad right here.
His dad says, nah. It's his dad that has a graduate, a 2 times back-to-back national champion, an Orange Bowl MVP, and now has a contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. Seems like life is going quite well. Enjoy your day.
Victory dad.
Checkmate.
Yeah. Checkmate. That is the type of absolute tone-deaf moronity that can only come out of the state of Florida. When you're talking about, where's my Florida man throws alligator through a drive-in window.
Way on down the chart.
Wait, I got it.
Florida man charged with assault with deadly weapon after throwing alligator through Wendy's drive-through window.
There you go. That's basically who Kendall Milton's father was talking to.
So 12 Georgia Bulldogs moved on to the NFL. And if you're worried about, okay, what Georgia had 15 chosen a couple years ago and 10 last year, is that right? 10, 12, was it 10? And then a little bit less this year in terms of the draft. That shouldn't be a source of worry for this next season at all.
No.
That means there's a lot of young players at Georgia who are just going to be hitting their stride this year. And, man, Michigan really wanted to break Georgia's record with more than 15 drafted. People said that maybe they would.
Harbaugh said 20. Their own coach said 20. Did not happen.
At 14? I mean,
13.
13. Okay, so it didn't quite happen. Good team, very good team, a lot of good players. Upperclassmen are players who are that played 3 years in the program, so that's what you want. Those guys to move on. The fact that Georgia had 15 players selected in the draft and won the championship the next year.
Right. There you go.
Unbelievable. It is unprecedented. That's the thing, because when you have so many guys, and people were counting on it. I heard rivals saying, well, Georgia lost this many players. Obviously, they're not going to be as good next year.
That was Tennessee radio.
Undefeated.
Right. Tennessee radio saying, well, I know that Georgia won the national championship, but this year, name one player on their defense. Name one player on their defense. By the end of the year, you could name them all. And
it's logical. That's a logical, step to take when you lose that many guys in the draft. And the fact that Kirby Smart and his depth that these other teams ignore in their arguments, and they want to come up with excuses because they didn't have the depth. Georgia won 2 national championships because of that depth, because they had quality 2 and 3 deep. And so you can see them lose that many players in the draft, lose that many players to the NFL, come back next year, go undefeated, and win historically against TCU. Yeah.
The depth is so impressive at Georgia this year that not only do you have these players, first of all, any player that was draft eligible that was a contributor for the Georgia Bulldogs is playing in the NFL this year. So that's what I look at. If you want to look at, oh my goodness, Georgia didn't put any player. Well, no. Draft eligible players that were regular contributors are going to the NFL at Georgia. It's just that Georgia didn't lose a lot of people to graduation or, the end of their career this year. They have many other players with a lot of eligibility left. Also, look, Jamon Dumas-Johnson he could go to any other team in the country and start at linebacker, which he's going to do, by the way. He had to leave because of the depth at Georgia. Brock Vandagriff, who can sling a football and is an incredible athlete, can start anywhere he wants to go. He had to leave Georgia because of the depth and what was behind him. That is what this year and next year have in store for the Georgia Bulldogs. There is a ton of depth.
So let's talk about that. One reason we're so excited about this coming season and why we've been talking about this team was going to take a couple of steps up. Defensively, especially, but as these players, as the last couple of drafts, it's been Kirby Smart's been drafting well. Not drafting, but recruiting well, of course. But the last couple recruiting cycles have been so good. Let's look at what it looks like in terms of draft eligible players in 2025, and I'll give you the count. It's going to be a lot of names here. And if you folks think that one of these guys is not going to be drafted either this year or the next year, somebody could decide to stay. But here's the names of the people who are draft eligible for Georgia: Carson Beck, Malachi Starks, Mykel Williams, Ernest Green, Jalen Walker, Dominic Lovett, Smile Mondon, Bell, I can't remember his first name, Bell, the wide receiver, Fairchild, Etienne, Everett, Urasek, Stackhouse, Arian Smith, Tate Ratledge, Rara Thomas, Colby Young, Warren Brinson, TID. Those are all guys who will play in the NFL unless some kind of devastating injury happens. Those are guys who could play in the NFL or could be drafted, should be drafted next year. There's no stretches in there. There's no Logs. We're not talking about any Logs or any Wallflowers or anything else. Those are all guys who should be drafted next year because should play a major role with Georgia. 19. That's 19.
19. Yeah, I think they stand a great chance to break the record. I think they will. And I think that on that list, there are some players, and I like the list because it kind of gives a idea where they see them going in the draft. And there's some players on there that could really float up or down that list. I look at TID. Did he get a 7th round grade or 6th round grade, something like that on the latest mock-ups?
TID was 7th, but he could be. I mean, he could fly up the draft board. He's going to play a lot and be in a very position for Georgia, right?
Right. He's a twitchy 5-star. Twitchy 5 stars. If they put together one good year, someone takes a chance on him because there just is not a lot of dominant defensive linemen. It is a more desirable position than quarterback. That's the reason Georgia recruits so many more of them than they do quarterback. It's that men of that stature and that athleticism aren't supposed to exist in this world. And when you find one, it's like finding a unicorn. You got to tranquilize it and bring it back, right? And so, yeah, I can see TID rocketing up draft boards this year. That's my mover. That's the guy I really think can really just – no one's going to fill Jalen Carter's shoes, but can make you feel, oh, okay, we got someone to collapse the middle again.
But him and Warren Brinson – if you're drafting Logue, those guys are already just kind of he's just a big dude who gets in the way. Warren Brinson and TID have that size and the quickness and the mobility that, I mean, they're going to be drafted maybe higher than 5th through 7th. Depends on their production and what. And it's not always production with Georgia. It just depends on what film you put out there and how well you play in your role.
3-year starters at Georgia do not get drafted in the 5th round. And Brinson is not going to get drafted in the 5th round. Warren Brinson's been on the field at Georgia. It feels like forever that he's been on the field at Georgia. So,
but the names has been floating out there lately. There's 3 names, Smooch, I've heard in the past week for Georgia for 2025. It could be the number 1 pick. Obviously, Carson Beck is that name because he's a quarterback and he's a upperclassman with all the traits that you want in an NFL quarterback, and he's leading the Georgia Bulldogs. The other 2, one I understand top 10 for Mykel Williams because I think he's going to wreak havoc this year. They're putting in a position to put up numbers and to cause all kind of chaos. I understand that. It would still be surprised for him to go number 1. But the other one, and I didn't see this coming at all, Ernest Green, left tackle.
Interesting. Kind of like an Orlando Pace type of – what did he go number – Orlando Pace went 2, I believe, back in the day.
I had not thought of that at all, that he was going to be a very high top 10 pick potentially next year. I mean, he was good, but he had some issues last year here and there. But apparently, when you look at the number, I guess the specs on him and the traits and the film he did put up, he's got really high potential. He was injured his freshman year, and so that's the reason you only saw him play this past year. So it's only be a second year this season as a full-time starter, and could potentially go on to the NFL. But those 3 guys, very impressed that they mentioned Ernest Green. I was like, okay,
that's really impressive. The Carson Beck is completely understandable. I think Mykel Williams, he may have the type of blow-up year that we've always wanted a guy to have at Georgia, but I'll be completely honest with you. I think people now understand Kirby's system. I heard a guy say today about Michael Williams that he needs more sack production to be a high round draft pick. No, you don't. Kirby's system, the sack is the most overrated stat in defense. That is not what you need. Nolan Smith, did he ever have more than 5 sacks? I don't think he did. And Nolan Smith is an absolute stud. And so, but do I think Michael Williams will this year? Yes. Do I think he needs to, quote, improve on his pass rushing? No, he's just going to be in a pass rushing position more this year. But the size is what they look at. They look at Trayvon and they say who looks like Trayvon in college football. Well, it's Michael Williams, 6'6", 268, I believe, at the last time he stepped on the scale.
And the mocks had these guys going into the top 2 rounds. Beck, Starks, Michael Williams, Ernest Green, Jalon Walker, of course, Dominic Lovett, Smile Mondon, and Dylan Bell, all possible. That's based on speculation, and
who do you think of that?
Anything could change.
Who do you think of that group stays around? That group you just gave, I hear a name or two that would stay. Yeah, Jalen Walker could play his way into the first round if he stayed.
He may be a first round pick if he can get on the field and stay on the field in the early downs and not just be a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. Dylan Bell could stay. No doubt about it. Out of those that I just mentioned, and probably I would tend to believe he might stay another year.
He may
because after they lose Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett and Colby Young, I mean he already could be the number 1 receiver potentially. If it might be between him and Dominic Lovett. We've seen Dylan Bell make all the tough catches. He's going to be a favorite receiver this year, so he could go on, or he could stay another year. It just depends on what his situation is.
What do you think your NIL looks like when you're the number 1 pass catcher at Georgia? It probably looks pretty darn good, and that's what Bell will be looking at that next year.
Yeah, and that'll be the way Georgia wants to reward those guys.
Yes, exactly.
Reward them on the back end, like Carson Beck did. And not always as those freshmen coming in. But Georgia's more than willing to compete. It seems like we heard it talked about, and they have to play the games, especially with some of those key positions, quarterback, defensive lineman. Those guys are going to get good packages coming in to the system. But Georgia's never going to get in a bidding war. You got to believe in, because Georgia has already won the argument. Like you said last week, you don't have to be a starter to be a first round pick. We got evidence to prove you could be in the 2 deep and be a first round pick at Georgia. So, and you have a lot of tread on your tires going forward.
That's so true. It's so true. And I think about what was the running back at Bama I love so much? Ingram. What was his name? Was it Mark Ingram?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I loved him. I loved Richardson. I loved Lacey. All of those guys came out of Alabama with no tread on the tires. They had been beaten up and beaten down. Georgia, that's the difference. This whole idea that Kirby copies Saban, no, he doesn't. I'm sure he learned some life lessons and some wisdom from Saban. But the fact of the matter is Kirby trusts his depth more than he trusts any one player, and no other team in college can say that. Georgia is the only team that you could take their 2 best players, remove them from the team, and the team would be just fine. Georgia's the only team you could say that about in the country, and it's been that way for about 5 years now.
Yeah, it definitely has, and we preach that. It takes people a while to catch up to that thought because you're used to seeing those marquee names. And we've said it for the past few years, even with the national championships going into the season, we didn't know who the marquee names were going to be. We didn't know it was going to be Stetson Bennett. We didn't know it was going to be Jalen Carter. We didn't know those players. We had anticipation like anybody else does for their program.
Devontae Wyatt, right?
I'm telling you, man. Yeah, we did not know how good he could be. And a lot of times, some of those players like a Devontae Wyatt do their job in the background. Mm-hmm. But the people who sign those checks,
that's right,
notice. They notice. They watch. Like Coach Hayes does. He can watch some things and see stuff that we miss. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Georgia uses those guys to their fullest potential and puts them in positions where they can succeed. Doesn't overexpose them. And Georgia doesn't have to chase statistics because they play complementary football. That's a part of winning, but they don't put those players. They don't have to have players that chase statistics because the sack is a big number or a big, I guess, term in terms of what you're looking for. But affecting the quarterback and changing his clock is more important than actually just putting up those statistics.
So true.
And Georgia's okay with that because a lot of times those players who are chasing the sacks, they put you at risk. They can put your defense at risk.
Yes.
We see that over and over, and Georgia prefers to take them as they come, but not to force it. There's times they will. On a third down, they'll force it, and they'll really speed up that quarterback's clock, but not at the sacrifice of what they're trying to do overall.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big thing this year. I think that it just did not look right for Georgia's defense to be really good but not great last year. Yeah. It did not look right for guys to get running backs to get the edge.
Yeah, it was more so against the run, though, wasn't it?
It was the run. It was look the SEC title game. You can talk about Kirby Smart overthought things. What's going on with the defense? Why didn't they pressure the quarterback more? All of that. Look, late in the game, Alabama could run the ball for first downs. As simple as that. Yeah. That's a 3-point difference in a game. 4 first downs running the ball late in the game. That's the game. And it just does not look right when these running backs get the corner, and that's the reason there was such turnover where I'm talking beloved starters at the linebacker position, for instance, are now gone because that's not going to happen again. And that's much more important than a guy with 8 sacks or a guy with 10 sacks. If you set the edge and the outside is somewhere no team can run, I don't care if you have 2 sacks. It does not matter because when you take away the outside run, the pass is doomed. And I mean doomed because if you can just run up the middle and throw, that's it because you're not running up the middle on 700 pounds of man. So if you can't get the outside, there is no run, which means the pass is a lot easier to defend. So it's understanding football, understanding why Trayvon was number 1 overall, which we listen to people complain about it and whine about it and say, what in the world? And now there's no question by anybody as to why it was number 1. Ask everybody in Jacksonville. He's one of the best players in the NFL right now.
As we move forward, I think, Smooch, and the draft is over, and we talk about what else is going on in college football because there's kind of there's the recruiting still going on. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of a dead period from a fan standpoint, and so we're kind of looking for things to set us off or to tweak us. I guess a lot of fans are doing that, and then they're offended when you respond. Now, we've seen some things. I think we've seen a couple things. I do want to touch on real quick, and we've been very skeptical about Colorado's program. Before we talk about Keon Coleman and that nonsense, man, Deion's making it. He's got his supporters, and we love Deion as a player.
We love Deion.
The things he and his son come out and say on Twitter just doesn't seem championship. It doesn't scream we're about winning football. It tells you that there's some issues. There's going to be issues. There already are issues in that locker room, and if you think it has to just crumble in front of your face to know it's going to happen at some point, because I think Colorado could win 2 to 3 games this year. They may be the first couple of games too. And that's not a knock on Deion or what he wants to do. It's a knock on how they're going about it, and it's so unique. It's such a unique way. I don't think it's got a chance in working because it doesn't foster culture, doesn't foster teamwork and love of the guy next to you. When you hear Shedeur Sanders come out and say this guy who just left, who wasn't really happy with the way he was dispatched by Deion, right, and then you call him mid, and who was he anyway? Mm-hmm. That's just not leadership stuff. And that's okay. If you got a team, it's not great. We saw it with Tennessee. It's okay when you're winning, but when you're supposed to the leader, when things start going bad and your leader is one of the guys who is kind of losing his cool and throwing people under the bus, it's going to
That's
be a
it.
disaster. A disaster.
That's it. Throwing people under the bus. It's just poor leadership. You know, we're in the middle of a presidential race, and there's this line you hear every debate season. What he said was just not presidential. And that's what you're dealing with. That's just not leadership. That type of bitter, immature squabbling, it's more middle school than anything else. And it's one thing for an impetuous youth like Shedeur Sanders to say something stupid. I mean, that's going to happen. I mean, you're Shedeur Sanders. You grew up wealthy. You've got crazy talent. Your dad is one of the 3 best athletes that maybe ever walked the planet. And you've played at terrible schools where you were the man from the beginning. It's one thing to understand, okay, this guy might be a little detached from reality. He might be a little arrogant, and he might need some softening. But then when Dad, who, by the way, I thought Deion did quite well in certain things last year, but when Dad gets emotional about his son, and rather than saying, hey, you know, young men full of testosterone say stupid stuff, you know, and then it would have been over. It would have been over had he just said something like that. We'll handle it internally. That's not what we are. No. Deion goes after it. He goes to defend him. He goes after all this because you and I think it was you. I can't remember because we have so much fun and we say so much crap on this podcast. But is this just Deion trying to get his son drafted in the first round? Is that what this whole experiment is? Because it sure feels like it. It doesn't feel like it's for the love of these kids. It doesn't feel like it's to see all this growth and everything. He's got what's the kid's name? Hunter? It's Hunter and Shedeur. I don't even know the name of Deion's other kid who played on the team. I don't even know his name. He's got 2 sons that play.
Might be Deion.
It's not.
Deion Jr.
It's not because because he has a daughter named Deandra. So it's not. So
you think after? I do agree with you. I think a lot of it is, and it's tough as a father. And I coach baseball and I coach my son, and I always put my son in the best spots for him, and he was a great player, so it didn't make me look bad. If I put him batting second or third or fourth, it didn't matter. He was the best hitter on the team most of the time.
Right.
It didn't matter if he was hitting those spots, but I was going to take care of him first. I feel like this is daddy ball, and at the highest level, or almost. I wish they were at the highest level. It could be, but I think it's daddy ball. And do you think that Deion's going to, after Shedeur is gone, his kids are gone? You don't see him continuing to coach football. I don't at all.
No, because he doesn't seem to even, not only does he not seem to love those kids he's brought in, he doesn't seem to even like them. And I remember during the Gucci, the Deion introduction thing where he's talking about, Louis, not Gucci.
Louis.
I am
bringing
so
Louis.
freaking middle-aged.
Close enough.
Yeah, he's like, I got a bunch of people coming, it's all Louis. I remember that. It's like, these are still kids that have given their life to play in football. And even if you're going to cut them or whatever, be respectful to them. He's not. And he wasn't. And that was seen as this great leadership thing. I didn't see it at the time. And now we're seeing the other side that he just, Deion was a great teammate by his own teammates' recall. Deion was a phenomenal athlete. But Deion does love Deion, so you can only imagine the love he has for his legacy. And I like Shedeur. I think Shedeur could actually be a quality NFL quarterback. Do I think what Deion say he was going top 5? Absolutely not. He's like a flyer you take on Russell Wilson. Sometimes it works out like it did with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was 3rd round, I believe. Sometimes it does not. Shedeur is not one of these slam dunk top 5 picks. Of course, that didn't stop the Falcons and whoever drafted that kid out of Michigan this year. But anyway, it feels forced. And at this point, Deion's coaching ship there feels disingenuous.
Yeah, because he doesn't care about recruiting. He just tries to be prime time and attract talent that way. And you can get some of those guys, but you can't build it. You can't build a team like we talked about because you don't get those guys on the offensive line to come because you're Deion Sanders. You get a defensive back, you get a wide receiver, maybe a quarterback, running back. You don't get the guys that win football games because they're not stupid. I think they're okay. They're okay without the flash. And folks, and you see the criticism. You see Deion's got his entourage and his followers. We like Deion as a player.
Love Deion.
We're skeptical and cynical about how he's going about this, and it's okay. It's not. You don't have to call us a hater. It's just seeing something and calling it like it is. It don't matter who it is. It could be anybody. It could be Dan Mullen. It could be Josh Heupel. It could be Ryan Day. We've done all those things. This is Deion Sanders' turn. He's earning it, and he's earning it from a lot of people. If he's successful, I will be shocked. I won't say I'll be happy for him because I don't care. I would be shocked.
I would be shocked too.
It's that much of a stretch that he's going to run a successful program because that's not what he's building. That's not even up for debate that he's trying to build a successful program. Smooch, he's trying to get enough players around his kid to get him drafted to where he wants to draft, and then Deion will find something else to keep him interested. Call it like it is. That's what it is, and that's fine. But the media wants this to be some kind of a real thing. This is like a this is a TV show. Is what it is.
It's a reality show, a publicity
Yes.
stunt. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's get Shedeur into the first round, and that's the name of the show. Shedeur goes first, and the thing is Shedeur could be a quality quarterback. And, the interesting thing is, here's a question that needs to be asked to Deion: would Shedeur have done better had he gone to a school and gotten developed and worked hard? He's not working hard. He doesn't even go to class. And
that's what I was. My next comment was: is Travis Hunter? Would he be better served to go to a program like Georgia? Not that he had to go to Georgia, but a program like Georgia where he is playing against the best. Would he be better served to develop? And you said the same thing about Shedeur. They would be both better served to practice against the best.
Absolutely. And Travis Hunter was a once. I mean, he's got so much talent. You look at
He's like Caleb Downs or KJ Bolden kind of.
Bolden was the exact example I was going to use. I think Travis Hunter is the only player I've seen more physically gifted than Bolden in the last 5 years. And it's not by a wide margin, but I do think Travis Hunter has more physical gifts. I can guarantee you this, though. At the end of this season, Bolden will be the better football player. And it doesn't have to be that way, but the fact that he's somewhere where he's going to be yes-manned and worshipped and pumped up, sunshine blown up his little Hunter skirt so he can play both ways. And meanwhile, Bolden's going to be getting his butt kicked by a bunch of 3 stars, 2 stars, and guys that are walk-ons, and he's going to get out there and he's going to rise to the top. This chiseled, beaten down, and conditioned warrior for the Dawgs. There's a big difference in those two programs and the two results they get from their athletic studs.
Right. And, Travis Hunter was given all these promises to come play there, of course, that he would be able to do this and that and all these things. And that's what he wants to do. That's fine. I'll, as a little quick aside, I heard that Caleb Downs was given some of those same promises. Now, Ohio State's a much, much better program than Colorado. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well in terms of the promises. I've heard that he was made to give offensive opportunities and punt returning and all that, as well as defense, which is where he will make his money. We'll follow that. I'm just curious to see how these promises, and I've had conversations with people about, well, this player is going to do this. He was promised this, and I'm like, dude, you don't. Whatever happens in the living room, once they get on the field, if you're in a quality program, that's done. That's done.
It's
you got to
over.
earn it. It better be done.
Yeah.
If it's not, then that's the big problems right there. So I don't think many good coaches make promises in the living room. That's just not the way sports works.
Well, with Caleb Downs, it happened at the last minute where coaches made promises. That's how I know it's not going to work. Now, do I think Caleb Downs is going to be a fine player? Do I think he's going to go in the first round of the NFL draft? Absolutely he is. He's too talented to not. Do I think he's going to be this terror in the middle of the field for Ohio State on defense? No. Do I think Ohio State's defense is going to be elite because he's there? No. You know why? Because he was promised too much sunshine to go there. He wasn't told, you pick the best program that'll chisel you into what you can be. He didn't choose. Well, he may have chosen that at first, but at some point, he flipped the coin and went the other way. And that's fine. It's not sour grapes by Georgia. We don't need Caleb Downs. My point is, Caleb Downs took the easy way. He took a place that doesn't value defense. And sometimes even that tells you all you need to know about where a player is. Some team's going to take a flyer on him, but the difference is Caleb Downs could be Ed Reed if he wanted to put the work in. And does he? And I'm not sure he does.
That'll play out. Be interesting to see. Moving on, and we had some fun with this week. Everybody had fun on social media with this. We did preface it. Keon Coleman, former wide receiver,
God bless his little heart.
Yep, wide receiver, just selected to the NFL draft, and he is one of those players. He's a good player, but a little bit delusions of grandeur of where he is and where his program was, and it's also, as we going to play a clip for you, it's hypotheticals, folks. A lot of these things are hypotheticals because guess what? Football did happen. Georgia did play FSU, and there was a result, and it matters. Despite what you say, it would have mattered if FSU would have won. But since FSU had all these players that didn't care about playing, and it didn't matter at that point, and it should have mattered because when you play football games always matter.
Yeah. So, True, let me ask you something. In this clip we're going to play in a minute, you're going to hear Keon Coleman say that Georgia played all their starters, their players hung around to play against FSU because they were angry that they lost. All right, let me ask you something. What should make a world-class athlete more angry? Losing to the greatest team that has ever played college football by 3 points, as did Georgia, or being undefeated, feeling as though you were the top team in the country and being excluded from the playoffs? Which one, if you were a world-class athlete, a winner, which one should make you more angry? You should be more angry about being undefeated and excluded. So if Keon is going to say it's because you're more angry that you want to play, where was his anger while he sat his butt on the sideline getting ready for the NFL Combine?
Yeah, and if you want to prove a point that they got it wrong, playing football matters. Playing for your program, your university matters. All that matters. Suiting up one more time with your brothers matters.
Come on.
You had a chance to play the back-to-back national championship Georgia Bulldogs.
Come on.
Come out and put it on Georgia. Guess what people are going to say?
What are they going to say?
They're going to say Florida State. The best team, possibly the best team in 2023.
The opportunity's right there.
Right there. They punked out, Smooch. They punked out. And now you hear the excuses, and it rings very hollow because those are all hypotheticals at this point, and you had your opportunity and you didn't play. And Georgia, man, a historic beating, not by 10 points, 60, 10 touchdowns.
10 touchdowns, which makes the refutation we're about to hear even more absurd. That's the whole thing with this, is that it's honestly, and you and I talked about this as we prepared the piece, this is honestly almost too embarrassing to make fun of, because I can't believe a guy who, by the way, became a millionaire last week, he may have been a millionaire before, but he's definitely a millionaire now, actually said these words. And that's kind of how we took the piece that we did. If you're ready to hear it, Troop Brinson.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Once in a generation, a player comes along with intellectual gifts and elevated reasoning skills like none before. That player is former Florida State wide receiver Keon Coleman, and he shares his groundbreaking coping abilities regarding the worst bowl loss in college football history.
Of course, they want to play. They playing in the maddest HELL Bowl. They mad, but they lost. What y'all mad for? Because y'all lost. Y'all think this 2021, y'all supposed to just get in because y'all Georgia? It don't work like that. You would have won. You would have found out who was better between Florida State and Georgia. You would have played us in the Matter Bowl, the bowl that matters. We would play you on the bowl that don't matter. That's a waste of time. If y'all would have won and did what y'all supposed to do, y'all would have had to see it. Been not doing it the whole time. All that barking would have put the spirit straight through you, Kyle. Ain't no barking. That's dead. They'd have found out, but the world may never know because Georgia decided to lose.
Georgia didn't decide to do.
Lose
to Florida State.
They did not.
Yes, because they played that game there, Keon. They did. Georgia played that game 63-3. Keon Coleman, 4.64 in his 40 as a wide receiver. I'm sure that Lassiter was really worried about him making a difference, but Georgia showed up and played football because it didn't matter.
I want to put this into perspective, Troop Brinson. I am 5'11" and 3/4. You can call it 6 feet. In high school, I was 5'9". I didn't play football after the 10th grade, but I did run track and field for a few years. In the 11th grade, I ran the 40 because they had a laser timer outside, and I ran a 4.71 40 in the 11th grade. Now, that's not far off of Keon Coleman. I'm just saying, if you're going to bring the talk, look, I'm just a podcast guy. I'm just a fat old Southern Baptist at this point. But my point is, if you're going to have this type of attitude, does he really think that his 4.6 speed could have made a 60-point difference in that game? That's the question I have.
No, not just him. And again, it comes down to this has been rehashed, and it was funny to see him still talking about. I know RG3 asked him the question, but he was ready for it with the answer. Folks, if Georgia would have played Florida State at their best with their quarterback, the quarterback was already hurt. I don't care if Jordan Travis was playing.
Of course.
This is the ACC.
It's the ACC.
It is not the same level. And you saw when Georgia said, okay, we're mad, you saw what level they can go to. I don't care who you put on the field. We've seen it over the years. It's not new. When Georgia decides it's done, it's over. Right. And Georgia turned on the Jets. And I'm going to tell you, Keon, I don't know if you paid attention to the last couple of games before you played Georgia. That didn't strike fear to anybody when you were 24 points on Florida.
We'll put that graphic up right here. There we go.
And then when you scored 16 points against Louisville.
Those
guys, you weren't opting out then. So you opt out against Georgia. You play, and now you're using hypotheticals to make yourself feel better. We see right through that. And if Georgia would have beat Alabama, I still don't think Florida State's getting in. The committee had already made their decision.
No,
that Florida State was not a top 4 team. It was going to be Texas at number 4. If
their
that
conference
happened.
Is a joke. They don't play anyone. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, insane.
Now, if Jordan Travis is healthy, they're probably getting in. But once he was injured, and you saw the Florida game, and they had to win that game fairly late. And then you saw that Louisville game where it was man, that was a hard game to watch.
Snooze fest.
Once you see those couple games without Jordan Travis, you knew those guys aren't getting in. I don't care what you do. I don't care. You could bring a couple NFL players to play for you, not beating Georgia in that game, because Georgia lets you know if it's a season opener or a last game of the season. Look at evidence. I'm not just talking out of left field. Look what happens. Mm-hmm. Look what happens. And Georgia plays those games. It's a whole different beast. And I feel a little bit less than to have to even explain that against a team like FSU, who is never, or I say never, in the recent memory, not on Georgia's level. And in the next few years, not going to be on Georgia's level either.
Oh, it's going to get.
They don't
worse.
have the culture, Smooch. It's not built at all, man. You got
the Norvell
culture.
Somewhere. It's not what you want. No, absolutely. Look, you could have had FSU 100% healthy, and you could have still FSU 100% healthy. I'm not sure they could have beaten TCU from from a couple of years ago. I don't know. I don't see that. It's possible, but my point is the beat down, the 60-point beat. Well, by the way, it didn't have to be only 60 points. It could have been 80 had Georgia wanted it to be. My point is, do you think all your starters are going to make a 60-point difference? No, they're going to make a 17-point difference. So, okay, you would have lost by 43. You would have lost by 50. However you want to look at it, it's still a mammoth beatdown because you just don't have the horses. Look, Georgia had its third and fourth string in late in the game, and they were running up the score. There's just no way to spin it, though. RG3 apparently thought there was. I don't know what that was. I've always been a huge RG3 fan. I just don't want to hear him talk about football.
Another Mensa candidate, right around with Keon Coleman.
yeah. When the titans of football insight get together, it sounds like a bowling alley. Just
with I want to re-say this once again. Reiterate that. With Florida State still thinking they had a chance to be in the top 4 and win a national championship, they beat Florida 24-15. Last 24-15 against that Florida team.
Oh my God!
And then in a game that they had to have, muddled through a 16-6 game against Louisville. Now, like I said, it was so hard to watch. That is not the committee. Ultimately, likely those 2 games are what cost you an opportunity. It wasn't Georgia losing to Alabama. Listen, Georgia lost a game they felt they should have won against Alabama, but they still lost a hard-fought, big boy SEC contest.
They fought hard,
by 3 points. That came down to the last drive. If Georgia stops, Alabama gets the ball back, right there. But so that's the kind of game Georgia lost. They didn't choke it to Alabama, as Keon said, So, Keon, we appreciate you coming on, and you responded. The funny thing is that you see Deion Sanders and his son Shador responding to people criticizing him on Twitter. You see Keon Coleman responding to people criticizing him on Twitter. You see Javon Bullard, Tyke Smith, and there was another couple players responding to Keon.
Weren't having it.
What you talking about?
Yeah,
come on.
Well, I think Keon envisions himself as this funny guy. He is funny. He does envision himself as this funny guy that can say anything. But the problem is, if that's your thing, if that's your image, you can't get mad when people refute you, even because they refute you with fact. You can't get angry at it. But he's responding to nothing, no name podcasters out there, hypothetical stuff, and just people that don't even know him. But you can tell it bothered him. But I was really. I don't know what sports. I think they need to drop the journalism off of the term sports journalism as long as RG3 is involved, because he sat there and went, yep. Like all those people did at Jonestown before they drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, man. And the thing is that you if you say off the wall stuff, and it maybe not off the wall, but it's a clown show. I mean, if you want to be a clown, Keon's kind of becoming a clown in a lot of things. It's not off the wall to think your team had a chance to win that game.
Right.
But if you're unbiased and you look at it, Georgia was going to be favored big one way or the other,
100%.
Which means that we saw how the draft turned out, and Georgia put a lot of people in that top of that draft. There's a reason they did that. Georgia very talented. And the fact, we will leave this right here. The ultimate point in all this, Keon, is that as a program, if you support your program, you want your program to be the best they can be, you love your university, that culture is where, and that standard is where all that matters. Georgia's elite in that level. Those guys are going to play. You can't keep them off the field. They're going to play. You could say you don't have to play this game. You might hurt if you get hurt. You're not going to win a championship based on this, but those guys, you will have to drag them off the field. They want to play because it matters to them.
That's right.
So the Matter Bowl that he's talking about is your program. That's what matters. If it doesn't matter, you guys have proved that it doesn't really matter, Keon. And the proof is in the pudding right there, my man. That's the ultimate point we want to make, is when you are championship level, those games will matter. I don't care if it's the first game or the last game, a bowl game, the Cotton Bowl or the Independence Bowl. We don't care. But when you care about your program and your team, all those games matter. You want to suit up one more time with your brothers, and you want the last memory of all those fans to be of you as a winner. FSU, the 2023 team is going to take that L, the biggest bowl loss in college football history, 63-3.
The only college football team to have an undefeated ring fact checked.
Love it. Love it.
Wait, I got a laugh track for that. Fact
funny.
checked. They fact checked a ring.
Said not 13-0, 13-1, and once we do all the numbers, losing by 60 points, that's going to take that margin of victory down a bit. You know, there's all those walkthroughs in the ACC don't look as good anymore.
No.
And you saw Georgia, what they do the last 2 years, the last games of the season. TCU, what was that score? 65-7.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
65-7 and 63-3.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you want to be, folks. If you're not there and you're not there, trust me, nobody who's listening, or you're not there. That's right, where Georgia is. You're going to see this next year as Georgia has got so much talent and kept so much talent as well from that didn't go to the draft or wasn't draft eligible this next year. Smooch, we're going to call it. We can call it every week. It's going to be a great year. I don't care how many. The schedule is so crazy. You might take a loss or two, but in the end, you get to playoff football. And
Cream's going to rise to the top. Yes, sir.
Cream's going to rise, and you trust that Kirby Smart and his coaching staff and those players, man. It's going to be a fun year.
Yes, sir.
We are quickly approaching episode 100.
It's coming.
We're at 95 right now, folks. You can find us anywhere on our social medias, and you want to be a part of that because we've been putting out some special content. You need to see it, bookmark it, share it, enjoy it.
Share.
The Dog Show Pod. Anywhere you want to find us, the Dog Show Pod on our link tree. You can find us on TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. You want to see video of us?
It's right here.
Graphics and everything else.
And we're very attractive people.
Yes, YouTube. Pull us up on YouTube as well. Twitter, of course, like I said. Any iTunes, anywhere you want, you can listen to your podcast. Download us, give us a 5-star review, and subscribe.
Love it, man. Hey, great episode. It's going to be a 2-episode celebration of the 100th episode, and going to be a lot of fun things. Some cool guests, some cool best stuff. What we see is best stuff. And, but thanks for all the follows and shares, guys. It's been a fun journey so far. Can't wait to see what happens next.
Yes, sir. We'll see you in a few days, folks.
Let's do it.
But if you want to win, come to the University of Georgia.
This is the Dog Show with Troop and Smooch.
It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show.